I will call to order this meeting of the Monroe County Stormwater Management Board, and it is Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. And since we do not do a roll call, we will move right to approval of minutes for September 8th. Do I have a motion?
I move to accept the minutes of September the 8th.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Ms. Satonia, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Githens,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes,
and Wright Randolph.
Yes.
Thank you.
motion passes 3-0. And next we have public input for items that are not on the agenda. And this item is limited to, these comments are limited to 3 minutes, excuse me. And if you would just raise your hand on the Zoom screen. And I'm actually only seeing participants.
Yeah, Julie has entered the meeting.
Pardon?
Julie has entered the meeting.
Oh, great, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to note that Julie Thomas is with us now. So seeing no public and therefore no public input, we can move on to staff reports. Ms. Lutonia.
Hi. I have a few things I'd like to discuss today. I just have a couple of things. I'll go first, and then I asked Lisa if she can give us an update on some of the other things that she's been working on. I wanted to let you know that we hired our SPIA fellows. I forgot to mention at last month's meeting, so I do apologize to everyone, but I wanted to let you know. Their names are Marie Dishian and Forrest Levy. So they work combination of remote and in the office, and we have them started on several very exciting projects. So hopefully in the coming months, we can bring some of their work to you. But I did want to just let you know that we do have those 2 positions filled now. The other update I have for you is regarding the state's general permits. So at the NASM conference a couple of weeks ago, we learned that they're planning to release them by the end of this year. They're not ready yet because they had turnover at the EPA level and they had to go through one more round of EPA comments. So they're planning on holding a couple public input sessions in November, and then they'll be on public notice and released at the end of the year. So that is the only update that I have for you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? And seeing none, and seeing that we have no old business, we will move on to new business.
I'm sorry, I wanted to give Lisa a chance to.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
I forgot
that. Yes, please, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So the SWIFT grants that we had applied for, they had over 500 applications, and they only handed out 7 to 17 projects. We are to set up, I talked to our consultant that we hired to help us with some of these grants. They reached out to IFA. IFA is willing to sit down with us, talk to us about different funding operations or opportunities for some of these projects. We also had a meeting with our consultant on the Morse Creek Stip Road project, and moving forward, due to, I think, in the cost, if we take on one of these projects or not in-house, but that what we can afford out of stormwater would be Morse Creek at this point. So moving forward, we're going to keep moving forward to get these projects completed is our goal. So that's kind of where we stand for the grant grants. The VAC truck with the additional was approved last night. The remainder of that amount is in the GO bond that was also approved last night in public hearing. So we anticipate having a new VAC truck in December, January. There is one available, one built. And it should be available about the same time that the funds are available to be used. The mini excavator that was also in the GO bond, that was approved. So we will start getting additional quotes for that. I'm sure things have changed since COVID, but I do know that it's a 6-month probably waiting window to get the equipment in. I spoke with Jeff Cockrell today. He said we can move forward of trying to secure the equipment, even though we don't pay for it until it comes in like March or so. So we'll move forward on that. On the admin position, it's gone through PAC, it's gone through WIS. It came back as a it came back as a comment 4. So well, it's a 4 right now. They haven't adopted the new ABCDs yet for the job descriptions with this. So what they're going to do, according to last night's council meeting, they're approving the 2021 salary ordinance, but they will include this position into the new salary ordinance that they're going to present by October 18th. So they will include that. Then they have to work on the rest of the salary and the rest of the what they're going to do with payroll. But they are going to include this position as part of the approval process for next week's budget hearings. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Ms. Ridge? Seeing none, we can move on to the stormwater expenditure report for September 2021.
All right. So this is the September report. In the 10s, we have labor and fringe total $44,531.25. In the 20s, field crew supplies, maintenance, and other materials and backfill, $6,087.46. The line for fleet maintenance, we had some issues with the grade all. It had to go in. Jason said the brakes, just the brakes were $1,500. We also had issue with the one of the excavators, so that had to go in twice. So you might see some spillover to the next month's report on that. But we had some pretty big repairs that needed to get done on the equipment, which is part of it. So, and 30s, total $28,918.64. This was included all the costs for the NASM conference. Connie, myself, and Erica attended. We've been hiring flaggers now. The cost for the flaggers this year is much less expensive than the cost was last year. Let's see. And then what else do I want to say? We redid the sand filter at the garage. I'm trying something a little bit different with some larger aggregate than the sand. Hopefully it'll make it last a little bit longer, cost about the same, a little bit cheaper. So we'll see how that goes. Cartograph subscription, in the past that was $7,500. Lisa, I didn't get a chance to talk about this with you. The $10,000 is what was determined that stormwater would pay for it. We use, I think, a quarter of the licenses, so it about made sense. For professional fees, that $2,150 was charged for under Terry's contract for review. This was for the Hayden Flat stormwater design. It included a 22-foot wide concrete box structure that had some pretty significant modeling involved in it. So I really appreciate his help on that and all the time that he spent reviewing that project. I think it was definitely worth it to have that second set of eyes on all that complicated modeling. And then some remaining invoices coming in for Cherry Lane, but that work is complete. Same thing for Baby Creek, some of the purchasing. Morris Creek Stip Road, just same, working on wrapping up some environmental work. I should have the final version of the EA for Stip Road, Morris Creek. Hopefully soon. As Lisa said, we did meet with them for a progress meeting a few weeks ago. So any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the current thinking about a second road crew?
Mhm. So I have been considering this. I don't have my mind made up yet. I know that it is in the stormwater budget. We instead are adding the admin position, but I'm hoping with the stormwater permit fees and everything that position will pay for itself essentially. But I have not made any progress on adding the 2 additional stormwater crew members yet. So maybe Lisa and I can schedule a meeting to discuss how to move forward on that.
Yeah, and another issue with that is this space. And also, it's not just adding 2 new employees. You're going to have to buy vehicles, dump trucks. There's a space, the space at the county highway garage, adding more vehicles and items there. So it's a bigger picture than just adding a couple employees. So, yeah.
Right. It occurred to me when I was looking at the numbers on the amount of salary spent for the year and things like that, it was those numbers that made me think about wanting to know where we stand.
Right.
Any further questions? I would like to ask if adding the crew members just seems kind of insurmountable, or maybe until highway is moved, or are there notions of how that could happen?
Well, and the crew is already, all the crews are already at the highway garage. So even when we move, it'll just be personal vehicles out there in the employee parking lot, which we already know we need to expand at this point also. When you have the dump trucks, you have to make it a space to where those trucks can be plugged in for the winter for their plows to be able to work. So then you have to add different electrical outlet spots. And then of course we have emergency management, weights and measures. So it's a concern of space out there. And then also when you do, like I said, when you do add 2 more employees, it's not really the crew issue. It's just space of where everybody's going to go, as in park or dump trucks and equipment and things like that.
Yeah.
Yes, space seems to be a recurring theme.
It does. It does.
Something else is we've had a lot of turnover as well recently.
Mhm.
And I feel like we are still trying to fill open positions. So that's just
Yeah.
another thing to add to it is we have open positions.
Yeah,
Right.
it's really hard to keep the positions. I think we have 4 total in the whole department between 1 in stormwater and 3 in highway. Getting CDL licenses is going to get harder. And that's going to be something that we're going to have to, I think as a county, come up with a good plan on how we move forward with that. What might cost right now $250 to get a CDL license, which we assist in trying to do that through an apprentice program. It seems to have worked out really well, but come 2022, that cost is going to go to about probably $4,000 to $5,000. It's huge. They were supposed to implement that in 2021, but they held off due to COVID. We're also waiting to try and hear, sorry about my dog. We're also waiting to try and maybe work out something with NDOT because they're going to be in the same boat as we are. So they were looking at maybe even opening their own training facility on their property, and then to where maybe other counties or towns or cities could utilize their training program and help offset the cost with them. So it's a big problem, and it's getting harder and harder for to find applicants with a CDL license, even at this point. So, yeah, Kelsey's right. It's really hard to fill what we have right now.
That's going to impact schools too, with school bus drivers.
Yes. Yeah. It's huge. We've been learning about this at our conferences for about the last 2 years. Purdue and LTAP They've been trying to do some more research on it and make more discussion on it, on how it's going to impact local government and the cost. If it's, maybe we can try and set up and do like an apprentice thing, and then also make it condition of offer of what they would have to repay to the county if they left within a certain amount of time. So that's kind of an option. That's kind of what we do with our apprentice program right now. It's only $250. We pay for that test. If they leave within 2 years, they have to pay us back for that test. So really, that's the only money that we spend. But this gives them the time they have to have a permit, but this gives them time to train with our experienced employees, using our equipment, driving on the lot, because a lot of them don't have access to dump trucks and trailers and such to get that Class A or Class B CDL license. So it's worked out well. We just had 2 guys pass last week the test. And we also only just offered 90% pay until they get that CDL license, and they have 90 days to do it. So it might be something that we change for when it becomes more expensive, of changing that apprentice program.
Thank you. Any further questions? Then I believe I need a motion.
I don't think we need a motion for the financial report, correct?
Oh. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
It's been a long day. And God, I'm afraid that moved. Okay, our next order of business is the Stormwater Management Board 2022 meeting schedule.
22.
And that we do need a motion for. Do I have a
I move to accept the proposed Stormwater Board meeting schedule for 2022.
Second.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions about this? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this? And we still have no public, so there is no public comment. Ms. Satonia, would you please read the roll?
Sure. Julie Thomas,
Yes.
John Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Penny Gittens,
Yes.
Lee Jones.
Yes. All right, motion carried. Thank you. And next up, we have the U.S. Geological Survey stream gauge at Kurtz, Indiana. And this is only for discussion.
Yeah, I'll give a brief intro. So I wanted to bring this to you, even though I don't have anything fully formed yet, but I want to get some preliminary thoughts on this so that I can, have some conversations with CBU and Friends of Lake Monroe and get everyone on the same page, because we will need to make a decision. I'm hoping for the November meeting. If we do want to continue with this, we'll need time to put a contract together. So this is to fund the stream gauge in Kurtz, Indiana, in Lawrence County, the stream gauge that Friends of Lake Monroe and CBU are collecting water quality data for the branch of Salt Creek that flows into Lake Monroe through Kurtz. So in the past, I think we had a total of, I don't have the contract in front of me. I think it was like $18,000 total that we committed to this, to have it up and running for so much time. So I just want to get some general thoughts on if we would like to continue funding this project, what you would like to see if you want a report from Friends of Lake Monroe or a meeting or anything like that.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions?
Oh, go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, I wanted to get a sense of the benefits of having this versus what happens if we don't have this. In other words, how much better is our understanding of the watershed if we have this gauge? And I think, I don't know if that's just some information you can get from Friends of Lake Monroe and present it to us yourself. I don't necessarily know that they need to come to our meeting, but I think it will be important. And this is a 1 year, right?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, I just want to verify that too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I did email Maggie today to start this conversation with her.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions?
I guess we don't know what the cost would be. I guess following along, you indicated we've invested $18,000 so far, but that's not for a 1 year cost, correct?
Correct. I can get you information on the costs. I want to say we had $10,000 for this year in this account line. And we were billed like 9,000 and something recently. So it's it
Really costs about
$10,000.
Okay, so it really costs that much to have a gauge out there, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Quite expensive, maybe.
There aren't many around.
No, they're not, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Is I think it's very, very, very significant for us to be having these water monitoring gauges scattered about where we can kind of start understanding what kind of impacts our stormwater, our development, and other things are having. We need a baseline of data, and we need to continue to build that baseline of data. I think these are practices we need to keep in place indefinitely. I've heard from some of the leaders across the state in stormwater that it is critical for us to monitor our creeks and waterways. And we don't have that many in Monroe County, unfortunately. And I feel like we should be more in a position in this county to be leading by example across the state. That's my opinion. But without having a linear baseline of data, we're not going to know what is actually impacting our waterways necessarily, because if we go 2 years without doing it and we have one significant storm event or development, or we see that there's a bunch of grading going on and erosion occurred, we can't pinpoint what that looks like downstream without these water monitoring gauging systems. I see that you wanted to add something, Kelsey, so I'll go ahead and pause, but I think I got my point across of how critical it is for us to doing that. I understand improving our right-of-ways and our other areas that are impacted by stormwater, but this is an area I think stormwater needs to more aggressively pursue, especially in the immediate future, because I didn't really want to bring up the annexation discussion in the last one with hiring the staff and everything. I've talked a little offline of where I am on that one. And I think Kelsey and Lisa are doing a terrific job. But this one right here, sitting on the city's plan commissioning, knowing kind of what their ordinances are, they're not as strenuous as the counties. So for us to have more stations in place, we could potentially produce data, to heighten some of the city's ordinances and such. Ultimately, this is our community. And I think regardless, we need to be doing this practice and we need to be sharing this data with our incorporated towns and cities if they're not going to be collecting it themselves.
I want to clarify on this, that this is not located in Monroe County and it is not measuring runoff stormwater from Monroe County. This is a completely separate county. We just happen to be interested in Lake Monroe's water quality. That is the main connection.
Yeah, but it's an offshoot. I mean, we're doing the lower Salt Creek. I mean, these all impact each other. I mean, I agree. I don't think water stops at our boundary, our county boundaries. But I get what you're saying. It's significant. And I guess my point is this is downstream. This allows us to have some insight.
It's upstream from us, actually. This is upstream in the watershed of Lake Monroe, the portion in Lawrence County. So it's monitoring water flowing into Lake Monroe.
I had those backwards, my bad.
Okay.
But my main point is we need a baseline of kind of what it looks like prior to it coming in. So we can see if as it flows in, is there issues going on? I just know that this is an area I think we need to more aggressively support. And that's all I really have to say. I mean, without creating a baseline understanding of what's going on, we're going to be speculating quite a bit of how this area has been impacted,
I would like to ask just what the gauge is gauging.
Mhm. So it at least does stream flow measurements in real time. I know that. I don't think it is a super gauge, which it's not a super gauge. So it doesn't do any type of water quality measurements, but that's why CBU and IU and Friends of Lake Monroe, they all had a plan to do regular water quality monitoring off of the bridge at the gauge. I actually did a sampling event when I worked for CBU, went down there and did the whole thing, collected all the samples during a rain event. I haven't seen any data from that. I think that's the biggest thing we're looking for, is to see what has come of this and if it is useful for us and how they're using it with their watershed management plan. So that's the missing piece we don't have right now, unfortunately.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's hard for me to raise my hand. I don't know how to do that, especially when I'm driving. So I'm not as familiar with the water runoff areas as I should be at this point, but should the Forest Service get their way with what they're proposing in the Hoosier National Forest in terms of clear cutting, if there are changes in the runoff, will this gauge pick that up? Because if so, I think it's even more important to keep it there than in the past.
I want to be wary of using the stormwater funds for water quality monitoring to, I guess, target things like that. The quality of data isn't going to be sufficient to form conclusions like that. We're just looking for, overall water quality. The design of the monitoring program was not centered around specific sources of pollution, but rather the entire watershed.
But I wasn't even talking about just pollution. I was talking about water volume even, because if we don't have things that hold, that absorb the water, hold things back, that's going to impact even the volume of water that'll be flowing through, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of variables, and almost all of them are outside of our control. It would probably require an engineering study if you want to get to that level of detail.
In that
I get-
case, oh, go ahead, Tron.
I guess I should have been a bit more prepared for this. I've never really looked into this gauge. I just know how, how that could really help us move forward with quality and volume. But kind of more to the data question, like, how is this data harvest and then kept? Like, do we keep like raw data from these gauges? Because the future analysis could be quite significant to have like 10 years of data and then giving it to an engineer to do a flood model, that's going to really make that model a lot more accurate, because they can start looking at these years when, the volume of water was more. Yeah, I forgot that's not a gauge that does the water quality. I remember the same activity you were just referring to. So I kind of blended those two together because I remember hearing about the quality of water as well. But thanks for clarifying that. I'm wondering if we might want to entertain having kind of a super gauge versus just a normal gauge. I think any major waterway that is a contributing waterway to our lake, or just in that just impacts Monroe County, I think it's significant to gauge the water as it's entering our county. Like, where is that water at? What's the volume? What's the quality? And then putting other gauges within the county so we can see if from point A to point B has the water volume increased significantly? Is the quality diminished over the traveling in that area? Like that's why it's really important to have this, because without that baseline data, we might be asking people to try to engineer something where they just don't have the information they need. So they might be making an educational guess too. So another reason I think it's really important for us to kind of think long about this and where the county's investment truly is to help support some of this, because if we made that raw data available, we could potentially see like a capstone project created from it. If we made that more, we could see people that just have general hobbies and things kind of break it down into other analysis, and that could be pretty significant. So I'll get off my soapbox, but as everyone here can tell, that I think having that baseline of data is very helpful, and not having gaps in the data, trying to keep it as linear as possible.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm pretty sure USGS has all of their stream gauge data available on their website. I've never tried to look for this specific gauge. I do know CBU has access to the flow data. That's about all I know. So part of the watershed management planning process is going to be drawing conclusions from all of the data that they've collected from their blitzes, from in lake sampling, from the stream gauge, which is only capturing South Fork, Salt Creek. So that's what I want to point out here. Mostly because this was a problem watershed with all the ag in Lawrence County. Just to put it in some perspective for you, they're going to be analyzing all the data, and I have a lot of confidence in Maggie and Sherry and everyone that they're going to do a great job sifting through all the data the main point is to find the areas of the watersheds that need the most implementation, to put money where the problem areas are. So.
All right. So basically this gauge is just gauging water flow.
Yes.
And then that data gets put together with a lot of other data that's being collected with other methods.
Yep, so we have the flow data from there. We have the sampling for the water quality parameters that's done by hand. And then Maggie could explain this way better than I can, but they've collected a whole bunch of other data, the whole entire watershed, within the lake between all the partners and everyone. So I'm not part of that committee on the steering committee analyzing all the data, but there's some very smart people involved. So I'm confident.
Yeah, I wonder if it might be helpful to have Maggie or someone from the U.S. Geological Study at the Thursday meeting, so that, I mean, it's November meeting, so we could kind of maybe get more specific information about this.
Sure. Yep, and I'm taking notes on, information that is missing right now so that I can work to get all that for you so that when I submit everything to you for the November meeting, you'll have a bit more to go by. So this is just to introduce it, to get some initial thoughts on where we want to go with this, so I know what questions to ask.
Okay, thank you. And does anyone else have any further questions, comments about this item? And it does not look like it. And that's the last item on our agenda. The date of the next meeting is November 10th, 2021 at 3 p.m. And we are now adjourned.